Hello, everybody. This is a different video than what I would usually be doing in a car. Usually you'd expect, oh, John has a weird flavor of something. But no, today's going to be a bit more complicated. That's why we are a landscape instead of a portrait shot here. But I do have a wonderful Ghost Peach energy drink, which is not my preferred energy drink. I'm a Monster Man. I like me some Monster, but no. Recently, United Methodist History had a very interesting article that they put out on News about the different trends in communion elements, and specifically in the use of grape juice rather than wine, because in the Methodist Church, although there are some churches that do use wine, it is standard to use grape juice. And the reason for this is because we are an offshoot of the temperance movement of the 1800s, or I should say it's an offshoot of us. And so it is pretty normal in any group that is tied to the Methodist Church that wine is not used. It's grape juice in order to promote temperance, the avoidance of alcohol of any kind. There's a long history of this. There's a weird story people made up about the idea that wine in the Bible didn't have alcohol. If anyone ever tells you that, it is a myth created by the temperance movement. There is no historicity to it. There is no reason to believe that, except that people needed to argue that alcohol was bad. But if Jesus drank alcohol and made alcohol, then you couldn't make that argument. So they had to come up with the idea, well, that's different. That's a wine that doesn't have alcohol, so that's fine. But that's not the case. After all, wine makes the heart glad, says the Holy Scripture. And are you just glad because you're drinking grape juice? No one ever has been in their whole life. No one. But I'm glad, there's a transition point, to try one of the historical alternatives to wine that I read about in that book. So hopefully now I'll be cutting to some footage of me actually doing this. But the recipe is to 1 quart of boiling water, you add a pound of raisins, smashed by hand. It was specific. You should hand crush your raisins into a pulp. Add them to a quart of boiling water, and then let it sit in that water for an hour to cool down, mostly, I think. After it has cooled down for an hour, strain out your raisin pulp. I'm going to do it through the same mesh sieve I use for Jack's baby food. And after you've put it through there, you are to whip in a whipped egg white. It specifically says make sure it's already been whipped. I did it to stiff peaks because I assume what we're getting here is aeration. And so I have it to stiff peaks so that's good and aerated. And I'm just going to fold that into the grape juice. And it says to do this until it reaches ebullition. And you may be saying, or ebullition. And you may be saying, what in the world does that word mean? Because I didn't know what it meant. And ebullition, it turns out, means producing of bubbles. So effervescent means producing of gas and therefore bubbles. But ebullition can be any kind of bubble being produced by a liquid. So I'm whipping this up until I get bubbles. So I'm still in the car at this point. I haven't done all this stuff. You just watched me do all this stuff. But I haven't seen it. So once I have the finished product, I'm going to put it in a nice glass and drink it. So I'm going to cut now to when I did that. Okay, hopefully that cut looked good. So I did all the steps, and you saw the clips of me doing all the various steps. And this is the result. So put yourself in the shoes of somebody in the 1800s. You're going to communion. Your pastor has gotten really into the temperance movement lately, so he says, guys, we're not doing alcohol, but it's okay. Instead of wine, we're going to use grape juice. And I've got a way to make good grape juice. And then he pulls out a bottle, and it's this. The color of sewage, and it's going to go in your communion cup. You know, the other thing that people do during the temperance movement was use water instead, because Christ turned water into wine, so water should be sufficient. That's probably better than what I'm about to drink. So again, in the name of history, I have created a authentic replacement for communion wine for the use of Holy Communion. So this was used in the Blessed Sacrament, and this is the color of it again. The tannins in the raisins all came out, and none of the things that you would want, like a color of grape juice. But let's try it. And there's also an egg white, remember, so let's see. In no world would I mistake that for grape juice or wine, but it's usable. I don't hate what is in front of me. I'm not going to replace what I use at any of the churches, because thank God for Mr. Welch. Dr. Welch. We have our alternatives that we use to wine. So anyway, that's my project for the day. I hope it was edifying to your spirit or something. Goodbye.